Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, where we are, and where we're going in life so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey. And there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 409. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about adventure, and I'm asking the question, what does adventure mean to you? Adventure is such an important part of my life, but I think that the way I define adventure is perhaps a bit more broad than some people. So I want to invite you to consider some ways in which you can add more adventure to your life, perhaps not in the traditional ways, because I know not everyone is into trail running and long distance hiking and that kind of thing, but I think adventure is so much more than travel. It's so much more than outdoor adventures. There are adventures in consciousness. There are all kinds of things. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into this week's episode, I wanted to remind you that I've got this ebook promo coming up. So I've got together with a bunch of other author friends, and we're doing a similar ebook promo to what we did last year, almost kind of the same time in May. So Keith Foskett, who you may remember from a couple weeks ago, episode 407, he's got a book that he's offering for free. Susan Jagannath, who has been on the show twice, episode 403 and 391, she's got a book in there, and we've got other adventure books as well. So if you are looking to add more adventure into your life, reading about adventure is one way to do it because it stimulates ideas of things that you could do. And I know we're still coming out of lockdown in much of the world, so armchair adventures are a valid type of adventure. So this episode is going live on Monday the 24th. This ebook promo starts on the 27th, and you can find it at hollywharton.com/adventure. And that's going to take you to a webpage with links to get all the books. However, that link won't work before the 27th. So mark that down and check it out. So this is a very timely episode because I think a lot of us need adventures, especially after the last lockdown. If you're in the UK, I don't know, it was a rough one for a lot of us, I think. And in other parts of the world, I know, especially in the Southern Hemisphere, a lot of countries are going back into lockdown. So now is a perfect time to be reading about adventures and considering alternative adventures that perhaps you can do closer to home that don't involve traveling all around the world. I also wanted to mention this book that I'm reading. I always have plans to talk to you about the books that I'm reading, but then I never do. But this book is so good. It was recommended by a couple of women in this Facebook group that I belong to, which is Trail Running and Ultra Running Women Only. It's a really great, really supportive Facebook group for women trail runners and ultra runners. And questions always come up about blisters. And really, blisters are such an important thing to consider if you're doing any kind of activity on your feet, such as running or hiking. And I'm learning so much from this book. I think from now on, whenever anyone asks me about blister prevention, it's going to be just read this book, because if I have learned anything from this book, there's no one blister prevention solution that works for everyone. 2, what works for you today may or may not work for you tomorrow because conditions change. And 3, there are so many factors that go into blister prevention. I think there are 13 different factors that he discusses in this book. I'm not even halfway through this book, but it's like the Bible of blisters and foot care. So the book is called Fixing Your Feet, and I will link to this in the show notes, Injury Prevention and Treatments for Athletes. And the author is John Von Hoff, and this is the 6th edition of the book. So it says it's written for people who push the limits of their feet: runners, walkers, hikers, adventure racers, climbers, soldiers, dancers, and more. And it's so good. There is so much information in this book, and I'm learning so much about socks and shoes and feet and everything feet. So I highly recommend this book. And as I said, I will link to this in the show notes. It is such a good book. Again, if you do any kind of activity on your feet, and if you've ever had blisters, read this book because it will help give you an idea of how to prevent blisters in the future and what to do when you get them. There's so many products and things that you can buy to help you with blister prevention, and I'm learning so much. I mean, I thought I had it kind of solved on my long distance walks by changing my socks, swapping them back and forth, and powdering my feet. That's kind of my new thing this year. And that's been mostly helpful. But the last couple of long walks that I did, both my Way South Path and my Downslink walks, where I walked both of those trails, or each of those trails, in one day, I got a really big blister on kind of the sole of my left foot towards kind of the sole and the heel. It's kind of goes up the side of the foot, but it's kind of starts on the edge of the heel. And in one case, it was like a blister on top of a blister because obviously I kept walking on it. And I know that's because I was striking my heel much harder than usual because I was walking quite fast. And so that's a new thing that I think I'm going to be able to fix by taping my feet. But I haven't gotten to the chapter yet on taping my feet to prevent blisters. But I'm learning which tapes to get. They're not the tapes that I thought. They're not the tapes that I saw online. This guy is a guy who is an ultra runner, and he volunteers at a lot of races fixing athletes' feet when they're doing endurance events. So he's got loads of experience with feet. He's got loads of experience with different people's feet, not just his own. So again, I'm going to stop because this book is so good. If you have blisters or ever get them or have any problems with your feet, get this book. It's called Fixing Your Feet by John Von Hoff. And this is the 6th edition of this book. I will stop talking about it, I promise. But the book was first written in the 1990s, I think in 96. And he keeps updating it. And there's a new chapter on kind of new theories in blister prevention. And it's this concept called SHEAR, SHEAR, that completely throws all previous theories about blister formation out of the water. Like, it's really fascinating. And it's a concept that I'd never heard of. So Fixing Your Feet, John Von Hoff, get it if you need help with your feet. So let's move into the topic of today's episode and get that book. So, adventure. What does adventure mean to you? So, the definition of adventure, if you look it up online, is an unusual and exciting or daring experience. A lot of definitions also talk about risky experiences, risky activities, but I don't think risk is a necessary factor in adventure. To me, adventure is so much more than travel or endurance sports. And to me, there are two kind of main types of adventure. There's outer adventures or physical, outdoor adventures, activities that you partake in physically. But there's also inner adventures or adventures in consciousness, which I'll talk more about both of these types of adventures in a bit. So why is adventure so important to me? Why do I talk about this so much? Why do I write books about this? Why am I trying to push adventure on everyone? Adventure makes me feel alive. It lights up my soul. It gives me that feeling of expansive joy that I crave. It changes my perspective. It helps me learn new things about myself and others. A lot of what I write about on my blog and what I talk about in this podcast is personal growth through outdoor adventures. So adventure gives me growth. It provides learning opportunities. I have learned so much about myself through all of my adventures. And adventure piques my curiosity. It gets me curious about new and exciting things. So adventure is just juicy and delightful, and I love it. And I'm always seeking new adventures and new ways of having adventures. I'm aware that this isn't as important to everyone, but if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that it is. So that's why adventure is important to me. So as you're listening to this, think about, why is adventure important to you? What does it give you? And let's get back to the question, what does adventure mean to you? So what is adventure to me? It's about getting out of my comfort zone. It's about saying yes to opportunities. It's about moving into the unknown. It's about exploration. It's doing something that I wouldn't normally do, doing new things, or doing something that I've done before, but in a different way. It's also about opening up to new experiences. So years ago, like 10 years ago, I wrote this blog post called "When was the last time you did something for the first time?" And I wrote this during a period when I was training, probably when I was training as a coach, and I was doing all kinds of new things like signing up for Toastmasters and doing all these kind of scary things that were outside of my comfort zone. And it got me realizing, this is probably one of the first times that I realized just how important adventure or doing new things was to my personal growth. I don't think I've thought of it as adventure at the time, but Toastmasters is absolutely adventurous. If you're afraid of public speaking, that is a great thing to try. It changed my life. So adventure, it's about so much more than just getting outdoors. But I think the important thing when you're reframing what adventure means to you is forget about the risk variable. There could be risk in your adventure, or it could just be something new or different or challenging or a new way of doing things. So I think when you look at adventure from this perspective, it really just opens the realm of possibilities for adventure in your life and for adding new adventure in your life. You don't have to run an ultramarathon to do something adventurous. So let's look at some kind of less common outer or physical adventure ideas, or things that you might not think of when you think of adventure. Try a new food, try a new recipe, try a new restaurant, cook something different. You can get your food in a different way, so you can forage for it. You can pick fruit or vegetables at one of those farms that lets you pick your own food. You can grow it yourself. Now, I think this is a really exciting thing because it helps you to look at your food in a different way. Foraging is really exciting. Obviously, never eat a plant that you're not 100% sure what it is, but there are a lot of plants that are really easy to identify, like dandelions. Those are edible. You can add those to a salad. There are lots of flowers you can add to a salad and make it really pretty. And picking fruit and veg, that's easy because you go to a place that grows foods that look familiar to you. But for foraging, you can take classes. There are tons of classes on foraging. There are classes on mushrooms. I do not know enough about mushrooms to do that on my own, but it's something that I look forward to learning. I signed up for a mushroom class last year, but it was canceled because the mushrooms were not coming up in season on the date of the class, so it was canceled, but it's definitely something I want to learn because I love mushrooms. And growing it yourself. I mean, I was very, very lucky in that I grew up in a household where my parents grew our vegetables when I was a kid. Sadly, I didn't like vegetables as much as I do now. I really only liked cooked vegetables as a kid, but I didn't like raw ones. So my parents every year would grow like 10 tomato plants, and they would grow these just absolutely gorgeous tomatoes. And I hated raw tomatoes when I was a kid. I didn't start eating tomatoes until I was like in my early 20s. I really didn't like the texture. A lot of my problems with vegetables as a kid were texture related, which is why I think I liked the cooked ones. But anyway, I was really, really lucky to have homegrown vegetables, which taste completely differently from the vegetables you get in the store, especially tomatoes. Tomatoes are they're like a whole different animal when you grow them yourself. So you don't have to get an allotment or grow all your vegetables. Just pick a vegetable that you like, or that you would like to eat more of, or that you do eat a lot of, and just grow that one thing and experiment with it. That's an adventure. You'll learn a lot along the way. So get your food in a different way. Take a new route to work, or take a new running or walking trail. And this is something I did a lot when we first moved to the area that we live in now, that we've lived in for the last 10 years. We live in an area that's very rich in trails. Like if I depart from my house in any direction, north, south, east, west, northwest, southeast, whatever, there are trails. And those trails lead to more trails. Like there's so many footpaths around my town. We are so lucky. And so I just explored for like a year, and I took new trails and turned down new paths, and it was so exciting. And then I got to the point where I thought, God, we've been here for 10 years. I pretty much exhausted all the trails. But in the last couple of weeks, I've gone down 2 new trails that are within an hour from my house that I'd never been down before. And it was just a thing of being out running and getting to that fork in the trail and going, I don't think I've ever taken that one. And taking it and going, whoa, I had no idea this went that way. So it's really exciting. So take a new route to work or to wherever you go, because you might see new things along the way. You know, even if you're driving in your car, you might find a new shop or a new museum or I don't know, something. It will be new. Something will be new. You'll see something new. And as far as taking new trails when you're out running or walking or cycling, that's really exciting. I love, even yesterday, I took this one little trail that I'd never been on that kind of linked up these two trails that I'd been on before, but I'd never been on this one trail. And it was just, I don't know, really exciting to see where it went. Read a new book on a wildly different topic. So I tend to read lots of nonfiction books about outdoor adventures, and I read a lot of fiction that's kind of fantasy. But every once in a while, I'll read a new book on something different. I also read a lot of marketing and business books. Not as much as I used to, because I'm really kind of trying to narrow down and follow just certain people. But read something totally different. Read like it's someone's autobiography, or read a nonfiction book about something that you've never thought about before. Or read a book that presents a political perspective that you disagree with. That'll give you a new perspective. Even if it doesn't change your mind, at least you'll understand how other people think and why they think the things they do, even if you disagree with them. So reading a new book on a wildly different topic can give you a new perspective in life. Again, it doesn't have to change your mind, but it opens your mind to other ways of thinking. Take a train or a bus somewhere random, and you can either stay overnight or come back the same day. This is something I've always wanted to do. And I think I've mentioned that I've always wanted to, or I did for a long time, want to take a train really far up north somewhere, like maybe Scotland, and use it as a workation. But the last time I had to travel up north, I went up to Leeds for a television appearance, and it was kind of there one day, back the next day. And I was trying to get some work done because I thought this is kind of a spontaneous workation, but it wasn't good. So that didn't work for me for a workation, but it could be fun to look out the window and see new scenery, or read a book, or just do something different. I don't know. I still want to do the random train thing, but I'm still kind of weirded out about public transport. And I don't like wearing a mask for such a long period of time. So yeah, that won't happen anytime soon. For me, at least. Next, do a usual activity at a different time of day. So try a sunrise run or walk, or a nighttime run or walk. So I've got this ultra coming up the first week of July, and I have not yet trained at night. This is something I need to do. When I was doing some training walks, I did do some training walks during the winter that ended up, like the last couple of hours were at night. So that was good. That was good nighttime walking experience, but I really need some nighttime running experience. So that is something that I plan to do, and it will be an adventure because I've never gone running at night before. Obviously, I'm going to take a headlamp or a waist lamp, but we shall see. I'll report back how it goes. Again, take a new trail or path, even if you don't know where it goes, or especially if you don't know where it goes. I know this is kind of related to what I was talking about earlier about taking different paths, but it's really exciting to see how different trails link up and to find new paths. Visit a sacred site like a stone circle or a hill fort or something ancient and exciting, or an old church. I love old churches. Play a game. That's an adventure. Buy a new board game or something and play it with your partner or your family. That's something that we did a couple of years ago, and it was really fun. We haven't repeated it. Like we've bought these two games. We played one of them. The other one we haven't played yet. I don't know why we don't just block out the time to do it, because it was really fun. Not something that we usually do together. Take a course, take a workshop in something totally new. So I do a lot of outdoors courses, but I'm kind of always taking classes on the same theme. It's either plant stuff or wildlife stuff or outdoor stuff. This weekend, I am taking a course, well, it'll be last weekend by the time you hear this. I'll be taking a course in making a traditional English longbow. So one of the guys that teaches at the Woodcraft School, where I take a lot of my classes, is a traditional bow maker. I think the word is bowyer, but he creates traditional English longbows and he teaches them how to make them. So by the time you listen to this, I will have made a traditional English longbow. And I don't know when I'm going to have time to learn how to shoot this thing, but there is a local archery school, like archery club where I live. From the website, it looks like a lot of people use longbows. So in my spare time, I will now be shooting a longbow. This is one of those things that I signed up for, because last year when I did my bushcraft course, we had this one kind of games evening where we did axe throwing and we got to shoot a longbow. And it was so much fun and so exciting. I was like, oh, I have to sign up to get one of these. This is so great. And then logic kind of hit in. And my logical side of the brain was like, when are you going to have time to do this? What are you thinking? But it's something that like piqued my curiosity and got me really excited. And so I'm going with that because I don't know when I'm going to have time to learn this thing, but for some reason I'm super excited about it. So build a longbow or do something totally new and different that you never thought you would do. Kind of related is to go to a random meetup group. So I don't know wherever you're living in the world if meetup groups are active again, but it's such a great website to find stuff to do. Another place is Airbnb experiences. So there are a lot of things there. And of course, you can search by local area. Find a meetup group or an Airbnb experience to do something you've never done before, or to do something in a different way, or to do something in a different area. Those are both great websites to find new things to do. Cooking classes or, I don't know, new adventures. Geocaching. I occasionally talk about geocaching. I haven't done a lot of it lately, but I was really into it about, 9 years ago. So geocaching it's this app on your phone where you search for things. So people will hide like a little kind of plastic container with like a notebook and a pen and sometimes little trinkets or toys. And you use a GPS device to find these things. And it's really fun. And one of the things that I found when I used to do geocaching a lot was that it kind of helped me find new trails, new places to visit. I ended up going off in new directions that I never had gone on before just because I was looking for these caches. And it really helps you to slow down as you're outside because you can't like run around and look for the geocache. You really need to be kind of precise in your efforts to find it. Some of them are really easy to find. Some of them are super challenging. There's some geocaches that I've looked for and never found. So geocaching. Get the app and check it out. So those are some perhaps uncommon or different outer adventure or physical adventure ideas that you might not have considered. Let's talk about some inner adventure ideas. So, meditation, I think it's getting more and more common. I don't do it on a regular basis, but when I do it, it feels great. So either get a guided meditation or do it on your own. There are a lot of guided journeys that are really, really useful and really feel like an adventure because they can kind of help take you down a mental path that perhaps you haven't been on before and help you to consider new things and see new things. Another inner adventure idea is channeling. So I talk a lot about channeling plant spirits. I used to talk more about channeling spirit guides. That's something that you can learn how to do. I can share some links in the show notes. My friend Cara Wild, who you may remember from various episodes of this podcast, has a course on how to channel your guides. There are other books and courses and things that you can do as well. Kind of along the lines is plant spirit communication or tree spirit communication. That is something that I talk about in my book, If Trees Could Talk. I'm writing a book now on how to talk to trees. And I'm going to be working, once my life settles down in a couple of weeks, on an online course on how to talk to trees. So that's one thing you can do. That opens you up to a whole new realm of communication. And of course, there's animal communication and mineral communication. You can learn how to communicate with all kinds of things that don't necessarily talk out loud like humans do. New healing modalities, like, Reiki, if you've never tried Reiki, or Psyche, or, other mindset stuff, or healing stuff. Get a massage if you've never had one. That can help not only your body, but your mind. It can help you to relax. So all kinds of inner adventure ideas. Try something new. Try a new healing or transformation modality. So how can you decide which new adventures you want to try? I would say probably some of the things that I've mentioned so far have kind of piqued your interest. Some of them you've probably thought, no way. But ask yourself, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And how did that make you feel? It was probably really exciting. So tap into that feeling that you maybe want to experience again when you're trying to motivate yourself to try something new or to try new adventures. And ask yourself what scares you, what makes you uncomfortable. How can you stretch outside your comfort zone in a new way? And what is outside your comfort zone? So my husband and I had signed up to this ultra in September. It's the Thames Path Challenge. And we both decided we don't want to do it. So we're going to kind of defer it to next year and change it to a different event rather than canceling entirely, because this company has a lot of really good events. But the reason we signed up for this Thames Path Challenge was for the wrong reasons. And we were both kind of new to, I hadn't even done an ultra before. My husband was just starting to train for them. So when we signed up for this, we were thinking, oh, it's the Thames Path. It goes along a towpath. It'll be flat. Flat is easy. Well, flat is not easy. Flat is really hard because you're using the same muscles in the same way for 100 kilometers. So we're looking for something different. And one of the things that we've been looking at is this ultra in Snowdon. I forget what it's called, but I'll look for it and link to it in the show notes. It's like the Snowdonia Ultra, and it's a 50 miler and a 100 miler. So he's looking at doing the 100 miler. I'm looking at maybe doing the 50, or I might just go up to Wales and accompany him on the journey. It's a super challenging ultra. They have a really long cutoff time. The 100 miler has a 48-hour cutoff time. The 50 miler has a 24-hour cutoff time, which is really, really generous for those distances, which means that it's super challenging terrain. So part of me really wants to go because it's Wales, and Wales is beautiful, and it would be totally new terrain, and it would be a great challenge, and it would be a great adventure, and it's really beautiful, and it's totally outside of my comfort zone, which scares me. So we've been watching some YouTube videos of this event, and it's absolutely gorgeous, but it has all of these kind of mountain ridge crossings where you're kind of scrambling on your hands and feet over these boulders at the top of this very pointy mountain. And there are a lot of those on the route. So, and of course, it's not just doing this during daytime, it's doing it during nighttime, because you might hit one of these peaks at night when it's dark and you've just got a headlamp, and you might be accompanied by other runners, or you might be all alone. So this is totally outside of my comfort zone, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, but I'm thinking about doing it. Maybe this year, maybe next year, but I'm kind of considering it. I don't know. So some things that scare you and make you uncomfortable and are outside your comfort zone make good adventures, because when you stretch that comfort zone in one event or adventure or one area of your life, it stretches it in all areas of your life or most other areas of your life. So I know this would be a great thing. I know I would enjoy at least parts of it, but some things are too much. So feel into what's too much, what's a good stretch and what's like a terrifying stretch. I'm still not quite sure about Snowdon. It might be good. It might be horrible. We'll see. I will update you. Next, ask yourself, where would you like to go? So I've only been to Wales a couple of times. And for outdoor stuff, I've only been once. So I would really like to go there. I would really like to go to Scotland. I would really like to go, especially northern Scotland, up in the Highlands. Where would you like to go? And it's funny because I'm mentioning all these places in Britain, and I think it's because I can't imagine traveling abroad anytime soon. And I'm aware that I was a guest on this podcast, Tripcast 360, and I will link to that into the show notes because it was a really fun, really great interview. These two guys are just an absolute blast. But one of the questions they asked me is, where do I want to travel to next? And I said, Scotland. And afterwards I was thinking, that probably sounds boring to people because, like, it's the same island that I live on. It's not that far from home. But really, it's because I just can't imagine traveling much further afield. So, where would you like to go that's maybe outside of your comfort zone or somewhere new, but yet doable in this weird day and age with COVID? What would you like to learn? Maybe there's something new that you've always wanted to learn, like a martial art. That's adventurous. What would you like to learn that you could sign up maybe a one-day course or a longer course for? And finally, is there a place that you've always wanted to visit, either another country or within your country or in your local area? Is there something somewhere new that you've always wanted to visit but haven't? So, I hope that has given you some ideas for new adventures, and I hope it has helped you think about what does adventure mean to you, and perhaps it has helped you to expand your ideas of what adventure means to you. So, that is all for today. I hope you found this interesting and useful, and if you engage in any new adventures, please get in touch and let me know. My email is holly@hollywharton.com. drop me a line and let me know what you thought, or you can find me online and get in touch there. If you got value from this episode, I would love for you to join me on Patreon. If you head to patreon.com/Holly Wharton, you can join me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month, and you get exclusive access to stuff I don't share anywhere else. I have a Q&A, so you can ask me any questions that you might have, and I'll record those for the group. And yeah, so there you go. Thank you so much for listening. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/409 for the show notes on this episode. Happy trails. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.